Okay, so this is April the 25th, 2023. It is 6:42, and this is a meeting of the West Virginia Democratic Party Affirmative Action Committee. This is, there's a little bit of feedback there. All right, so the first thing I'd like to do is ask Andrew, would you please call the roll?
Sure. And this will be my way of checking to make sure that I have the names right on this committee. Okay, Selena Vickers, co-chair.
Here.
Okay, Emily Clifford, AAPI.
Here.
Yep. And Daddy Berger.
Here.
Roger Dodger. And Martique Washington is not quite here yet. Or Mary Ann Clater, Black Caucus. Don't see her. Pam Garrison, individual with disabilities caucus, speech deficit here. Pam,
Here.
you're here. And the other person on that is Kevin Brammer. I don't see.
I'll be Kevin's proxy tonight.
Okay. So
Pam, he communicated that he was going to send me that proxy, but he didn't. So
okay.
I'll check in just a little bit and see if he did, but if not,
okay,
you'll just be you.
Okay, thank you, Selena.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Kim Felix, the Latina caucus.
Yeah.
She's here. Yeah. Josiah Sorrent, LGBTQ caucus, and I happen to know that Josiah is working. Selena, did he send in his proxy?
Yes, he sent in proxy, making Cody Thompson his proxy.
Okay, so Cody for Josiah. All right, Andrew Caldwell here for the senior caucus. Linda Childers, did Linda send in the proxy?
Yes,
Selena?
She sent in to make you her proxy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Andrew for Linda. And okay, Danielle Stewart. I see Danielle.
Yep, here.
All right. And okay, Ariana Islam, youth.
Here.
Okay. I believe that's all. Did I leave anybody out? I don't think I did.
Yeah,
yes,
Christina Basden of the
Chris. Okay, I was wondering. Okay, so Christina.
Yes, and then I have her proxy.
Okay,
and she sent that in. Mm-hmm.
Danielle has Christina's. All right, all the president accounted for except for several people.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Andrew, and we do have a quorum.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. And here is the agenda. Is there anyone that has not had an opportunity to view the agenda? Okay. Okay. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Great. All right. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of adopting the minutes as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay. Our agenda is adopted. Next, we will move on to the minutes. Is there anyone that hasn't had an opportunity to view the minutes that were sent out?
Because I was not at the meeting, I did not review the minutes.
Okay. Do you want to take a minute want me to read them, or do you want to take a minute to read over them?
Well, I wouldn't know whether they were right or wrong.
You're right, but you still have the opportunity. You still can vote on it, but I understand. Yes. All right. Anybody else? All right. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
And is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All right.
Just a point of
All-
information.
Yes.
So I know it probably doesn't seem or sound like a big deal, but for the Latin caucus, it really does have to say Latinx and Hispanic, because you can be Latin and not Hispanic.
Okay. Can you help me correct this? Should it
You
be
just
like
add slash Hispanic,
Yeah.
Hispanic.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Does it need to be corrected anywhere else in here, do you think? Or is that the only place it's?
I didn't read the minutes. I did read the,
Okay.
yeah.
I just caught as we were doing that Christina Baisden is not listed as a LGBTQ plus caucus representative.
There you go. Okay.
I'm so sorry. This is really small, but AAPI is the only one that doesn't have like its full actual written out name.
Okay. We can correct that.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
No.
When we do it out like that, does it have the slash in it? I believe it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All very good catches. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? All right. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as edited?
I make a motion to accept the edited version.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of accepting the minutes as edited, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, these minutes are adopted. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing just for a moment. And do just a quick officer report. Following the last meeting, the affirmative action and outreach plan for the delegate selection plan that we did last time, it was submitted to the West Virginia Democratic Party. It was included in the draft West Virginia Democratic Party delegate selection plan, which is currently open for comment. The full plan can be viewed at the West Virginia Democratic Party website, and there is a Google form to submit comments. Please share this delegate selection plan and the form with your caucus members and other Democrats throughout the state. I sent an email out today that had the link to the delegate selection, the draft delegate selection plan, a link to the comment. It's like a form, a Google form, and there's also an email that people can send comments to. And there was one other thing I sent. The meeting of the State Executive Committee that's going to be on May the 13th. I sent a link to that agenda, all of the descriptions of all of the vacancies and things like that. And so one of the things that we had put in the plan is to really try to utilize the vacancies to get people. I mean, anytime that there's a position, we want people with diversity running for those positions. But there are several vacancies on the State Executive Committee now. And so please encourage your caucus members and other Democrats especially those interested in leadership, to run for those positions. So with that, I wanted to, on unfinished business, we'll just go over those vacancies. they are, and this is sort of the order that they will be elected on May the 13th. Senate District 2, female or non-binary. Senate District 13, female or non-binary. Senate District 15, male or non-binary. Diversity at large, female or non-binary from Congressional District 2, and we will we nominate them. These other ones, anybody on the state executive committee can nominate, but the diversity at large, we will nominate them, choose them to be nominated at our next meeting on May the 15th. The West Virginia Democratic Party Vice Chair, female or non-binary, and Congressional District 2 Vice Chair, male or non-binary. So please, share that information with your caucus. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. So each of you, we're moving on to new business. Each of you were sent a copy of the, not just a copy, I apologize, access to the Google document of this affirmative action plan, and encouraged to review it, make edits to it. There are some items on the plan that need to be updated. For one, some of the caucus co-chairs have changed since this was originally developed. Secondly, the DNC has given us updated data on the diversity of the Democratic electorate in West Virginia. And I sent a document out to you. I gave you exactly what the DNC gave us that had the updated data related to the Democratic electorate. So using this data and available information regarding the state executive committee members, I drafted an update of Appendix A for us to look at. But this, what I'm hoping is that we could just spend the next maybe 30 minutes or whatever we need really to review this plan and make any updates that we might need to this plan. So I'm just going to open this up for discussion right now. Now, I saw people getting into this plan, so. Well, I'll just go down here. So this piece of it right here is the section on history. I suggested an update because this was how all of the diversity caucuses were developed, and I think that from historical perspective, that's important for people to know when they began and that sort of thing. I added in here on September 13th, 2022, the Indigenous Caucus dissolved itself by resolution. Is that, are you guys okay with me accepting that suggestion?
I mean, I read through it, and it's not so much of a discussion, but I had a question, because was it like the history component, did it like start at the beginning and then there was kind of some other stuff and it kind of like continued on? I just was kind of confused about that. Like at the very top, I think, where history continued. Yeah. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. So the sort of like the history of affirmative action and diversity inclusion really began, well, I mean, the big history, really came from the 1964 National Convention, the whole family Hamer. But in January of 1968, the DNC adopted policy of the 6 basic elements of an open party. And so that's where this sort of history started. And then it listed the 6 basic elements as updated. They've went through a little bit of a evolution over the last, however many years, 50 years or so. And then after you list those elements, then it continues into some more of the history.
Okay, that's what I was just. It's
Yeah, I
it's
could
just
see
a
where that
continuation.
was a little
Okay.
weird. Yeah. Yeah. So is this, is there any objection to accepting this, the suggestion?
Yeah, I don't think there's an issue with it. I mean, it speaks for itself. I don't know if we would how or when we would try to reconstitute that caucus, but as of this now, that's the proper standing.
All right, I went ahead and hit click, but if there's any objection, please note that.
It's,
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. It's not an objection, but it's also just more of the same kind of, I guess, concern in terms of, is the caucus dissolved, or is it just the two co-chairs resign so no one can run the caucus? And we can't find any new participants, because then that can just be like benched caucus instead of just dissolving entirely, meaning that it does no longer exists.
Yeah,
It's
very
a good question because in the letter they sent out, they dissolved the caucus, but I don't know legality wise if they have
Power.
the authority, yeah, to do that. I don't know, but they in what they dissolved it. But again, I don't know.
Well, I have, I went ahead and printed off the resolution. And so it has 3 points of resolution. And the first is the Indigenous Caucus Boards resign effective September 13th, 2022. And then it's resolved the Indigenous Caucus documents are to remain the sole intellectual property of the dues-paying members of the caucus and may not be reproduced in any part by the West Virginia Democratic Party or any future Indigenous caucus. And 3, resolve that the Indigenous Caucus of the West Virginia Democratic Party be dissolved on September 13, 2022. So they dissolved it by resolution. And so I think the future of a Native American Indigenous caucus is a question mark at this time. And then if there is one, we certainly will, if there's a change, we certainly need to include that change in this document, which we can edit it at any point.
Oh, we can edit at any point and vote on it to pass. And it's
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, I think that this doc, as I understand it, this document needs to be sort of a living, breathing document, and as things change and evolve, that that this document will change and evolve. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
No, those are very good questions. So here is a section on the statement of objectives and purpose. This part down here, I think, really goes to what we were really just talking about. The change or the edit that I'm suggesting is that instead of it I'll just read it. To encourage full participation in all party affairs at all levels by groups historically underrepresented in the Democratic Party's affairs, the Executive Committee has adopted, and the AAC, in conjunction with the Executive Committee, the county committees, and diversity caucuses, will implement this AA plan in its programs as updated or modified from time to time, with specific goals and timetables for. And instead of listing the caucuses, a list the different groups, because that's what the goals and the timetables are for the groups, not necessarily the caucuses. The caucuses are a means to meet this objective. And so I list all of them, Asian American Pacific Islanders, all written out. Black Americans, Indigenous people, Native Americans, and then Kim, let me know if this wording is okay. Latin, Latine, Hispanic, LGBTQ+, people with disabilities, seniors, women, and youth under 36 years of age. And then I put a particular note in here that I wanted us to be, make sure that we're agreeable on this in particular. This is just little semantics changing, but this is that even though note that the indigenous people, Native Americans, make up less than 0.5% of the Western Democrats, and there are no federally recognized tribes in West Virginia. However, there are West Virginia Democrats that have indigenous Native American ancestry, and therefore outreach to indigenous people, Native Americans, is encouraged, and this plan will include a representative goal of at least one.
Yeah, Selena, Andrew here.
Yes.
I noticed that the youth had, if you're 36 and under, for seniors, it's 55 and over, if we want to be consistent.
Okay.
And we did that because a lot of teachers are retiring at age 55.
Gotcha.
Why we
Okay.
lowered it.
All right. Kim, is this verbiage okay here? Or should I take out?
Yeah,
First one.
so you just want to use one or the other, so either a
Okay.
Latino or Latinx.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And is this okay to not be capitalized?
I mean, it's consistent with all the other groups, so
Okay.
that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any other comment or edit, or are these edits acceptable? These
There was-
suggestions?
There was one more edit I thought we could add. It was all the way back up at the top, but we had moved on.
Okay,
So
well,
I
let's
just
do this
waited.
piece and then we'll cut, and then we'll move back up and then,
Okay.
is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Any objection to these edits right here?
Do we need to have the part that you've highlighted about bumping up to one? It seems out of place over here, but if it's deemed necessary, I don't have a problem with it.
I think it's in there somewhere else. Why don't we go ahead? Why don't we go ahead and sort of like tentatively approve it if we're okay with it, if we don't hate it, and then see. I think there's another place that I have basically the same thing in there, just as clarification. If we think the other place is enough, we'll come back and delete that. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think it's in a couple of the tables, but yeah.
I think you're right. You're right. Okay. All right. So if there's no objection, I'm going to go ahead and approve or accept these suggestions. Okay. All right. Emily, if you can kind of direct me to the other one that you had mentioned just a minute ago.
Yes, let me find it specifically. It's all the way at the top, back at the statement and purpose of the organization. Where is it structured? It's where it's describing, sorry, I have it pulled up too, so I'm looking real quick.
Take your time.
Oh, right here, part C.
Okay.
Regardless of race, sex, age, color, creed, national origin, religion, ethnic identity, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, economic status, or disability.
Wait, I don't think, hold on, I think is this it?
Statement
I
of
had it there a
purpose.
minute
Oh,
ago.
sorry. It's probably part 3 for you. Oh, no, it's not.
No, it was C. I remember seeing it. And then you whip, right?
See.
Go stop.
Oh, it's
That's
D.
not the right one. It's
Mhm.
under, oh, am I looking at the wrong one?
Look at the page number. What page number is it?
It's page number 1.
Oh, okay. Well, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the draft of the affirmative action plan and outreach and inclusion, right?
Oh, no. That's, I
That's the
think,
one that,
You
We
might
got
be
April
thinking of the
9th.
one that or is it the one that we did last week?
Oh, I opened up the wrong email when I was trying to read it. Sorry.
That's okay. But if you
You
go
already
to
passed this one.
okay. Well, all right. If you see
Let me-
anything else here, we'll come back to it. All right.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. All right. So coming on down. All right, so here we're into organizational structure. This is the AAC is composed of 2 equally divided co-chairs elected from each established diversity caucus, which are AAPI caucus. And do you want me to spell that out, Emily or Dottie?
Why don't we write it out the first time and put AAPI in parentheses?
I think
And
you're
then we
right.
can just
Let me
use
see if I've done
AAPI.
that.
Yes, because it is quite a mouthful.
Just rolls off the tongue to me.
Here's the first one, and we'll put it here.
Close quote. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, now we're back down to here. AAPI caucus, Black caucus, suggested striking Indigenous caucus, individual with disabilities caucus, Latino Hispanic caucus, LGBTQ plus caucus, seniors caucus, women's caucus, and the youth caucus under 36 years old. And we should probably put well, we already,
I don't think, yeah, we need to say that again.
yeah.
I would just keep it as youth caucus.
Yeah, okay. Okay, is that all right? Okay.
I do have an inquiry. I don't know when to ask it. So, and I feel like this is the best portion area to ask it. So I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
But are there any ways, like, are we able to suggest the formation of new caucuses? Is that like
I think we need to get to that. I don't think that, well, I think that's a really complicated thing. And we've sort of talked about it on and off. Like the caucuses that currently, well, not necessarily caucuses, those historically underrepresented groups that we just mentioned, except for seniors, all of the other groups are specifically listed in the charter as being historically underrepresented groups, and that there would be an affirmative action plan to provide for, you know, representation basically equal to the Democratic electorate. And so that's our charge, like that's our mandate. And that's what this plan basically is doing, is living up to our mandate. Can we, outside of this, offer suggestions about other councils or caucuses? I think we can, specifically if we're asked. And I kind of think that I think we are going to be asked that, because there has been interest in like a veterans group and an environmental group or a labor group or things like that. I think the question that is labor a historically underrepresented group? I don't think they necessarily are. Environmental groups. See what I'm saying? So is there a need for those caucuses? Or councils? Sometimes they call them councils. Personally, I think there is. I think that they should be a part of the affirmative action committee? I don't necessarily think so, because I think this committee is really, we have to keep to the mandate from the charter to focus on those historically underrepresented groups. See what I'm saying? So yeah. I think that's a really good conversation. I think there's advantages and disadvantages that we should probably really debate and really have a very good conversation about. But I don't think we have to do it right now. And honestly, I don't think we should do it right now. That's just sort of my thought on it, but other people might have other thoughts and ideas about it.
I think let's get this stuff in terms of the things that are charted that are historically underrepresented, and then once we have that foundation, we can probably outreach more or
Okay.
branch out more. That's my shared opinion, I think, with you too, but that's just my opinion.
Okay. Anybody else? And if anybody's raising hands, I'm not seeing it, so just speak up. But anyway, is anybody else want to speak to Emily's thought?
I think she's right that we ought to move on and then table that for later discussion.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. So suggested edits in this section, is there any objection to accepting edits for organizational structure A?
Do we want to say elected from each established diversity caucus, which currently are the so-and-so?
Well, kind of in the same vein, I thought maybe we leave Indigenous caucus and then put in parentheses, currently
Dissolved.
inactive. But, based off what you said earlier about the resolution of it being dissolved, if we go with that as the marker, maybe we don't put that here.
It's a very tricky thing. Dissolution means that it no longer exists. I mean, I'm sort of reminded of the formation of West Virginia, where Virginia left the Union, and then there was a reform Virginia that was formed, and that allowed the state of West Virginia to form. So maybe there will be at some point a reform Indigenous caucus. I don't know what that means really, but either one of those two things could be done. Either write Indigenous currently dissolved, or which currently includes the API caucus. Either one of those, I
Well,
think.
what we could do is we could just strike all of that and just have it say elected from each established diversity caucus, or each diversity caucus established by the West Virginia or recognized by the West Virginia Democratic Party.
That'll work too.
I agree.
Any other thoughts on that?
Because that doesn't depend on the action of any group of people declaring themselves dissolved.
Right. Okay. All right. Is this right here acceptable to folks? And again, if you have any other thoughts, just please state them, and with this big screen, I can't see the hands raised. All right, so coming on, these are, if you don't mind, I'm not even going to ask about this stuff. This is just cleanup, deleting spaces and stuff like that. These are non-substantive changes. I'm just going to skip over those. I'll come back and approve those later, assuming people don't mind cleanup. All right, so now we're coming into the representative goals and the timetables. So coming on down here. All right, now this is a big section that I wanted to have conversation about, because and we talked a little bit about this last time, but I just wanted to kind of remind you, like, we came from having almost no mean, relatively no representation of diversity on the state executive committee to having some. And after the implementation of the memorandum of agreement and the new bylaw changes that came about, we were able to get 6 diversity at-large people and 2 AAC co-chairs. So that, and then also sort of like the pressure of people pushing for in vacancies, we got some diversity. However, when we had the election, when we elected the new state executive committee in the primary in May of 2022, we all worked really hard to get people of diversity to run for state executive committee and to run for officer positions and different things like that. And so what we ended up with as of June 18 of last year was, it wasn't, we did not, I mean, it was really like our first real try with a new committee at adding diversity. And we got to not 100%, but very, very close to the representative goal for each of the different groups. I think every group at that time, with the numbers that we had at that time from the DNC, every group had met their representative goal at that time, except, and some of them had even exceeded, except for youth and for people with disabilities. And then we got new, which is really awesome. So we were like, the plan was sort of like 50% representation for all caucuses by, December 31st of 2022. We were way past that as of June 18th, 2022. And so then the plan was for full representation for all caucuses by the end of 2026. So what happened was the DNC gave us new data that was based, they give that out because of the delegate selection plans. And so a couple of the numbers changed in terms of the Democratic electorate. So Black went from 6% to 7%, and LGBTQ went from 8% to 7%. And then there was also a slight change in people with disability, I think. Hold on, let me find that one. No, actually, I think that might have changed the stayed. And I think youth went down. I think youth went from 26 to 25. So very, very slight changes. But again, for the most part, we've just really done very well in terms of trying to meet those representative goals, which then the representative goal is just, making sure that the diversity groups are having a proportional representation to how they participate in the Democratic electorate. So you can see that this is, September 2022. That date is, outdated. And this has far been reached, basically, except for people with disabilities. And then, but we still want to have the full representation. So I thought we'd have a little bit of discussion about, do we want to alter this sort of like timeline right here? I'd like to hear different people's ideas, and one of the things, and I'll be quiet and let other people talk, but one of the things that we talked about before that we didn't think that we could get through was what Alabama did when they were revising their bylaws and their plan. And I'm glad to share that with you in a little bit, but let me just kind of be quiet for a minute and get people's thoughts about this timeline.
I have a question about clarification. With these 3 bullets you have, the first one says all caucus co-chairs have a seat. I understand that. Leave aside the date, but I understand what that means. But then you say 50% representation for all caucuses. I don't understand what that means. every caucus member would be on the executive committee? That doesn't seem.
Right. I think this is related to the representative goal. So the representative goal for, let's just say, youth is 25%. And so, well, that'd be hard. Let's just say 13. So half of 25 would be basically, 12.5 round up to 13%. So by, that whatever date, they would have 50% of their representative goal met. So I think that the way that is worded is very confusing. And if we keep something like that, we need to revise the language of that, I think. But it means 50% of the representative goal for each of the historically underrepresented groups.
Okay, well, that I can understand. Maybe that's the first thing we should do, is to change that 50% and full representation. So all how would you say that? Of the stated whatever goals, 50% of that number shall be reached by such and such. Of the stated goals in table, there's a table somewhere.
Yeah, it's Appendix A.
50% of the representation goal. I'm sorry to be picky, but
No, this is why this is good.
I think we ought to change the dates. So
Yes.
instead of 2022, maybe make it 2024, and this one make it 2025, and then the next one is 2026.
So you think this should be 2025?
I'm just throwing that out. I have no particular stake in that.
Okay.
And make the first one 2024. Just as a stalking horse.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? So let me throw out to you what Alabama did and see if we talked about doing this before, but we didn't have as friendly an executive committee, and we didn't think it would really fly, and we really wanted to plan things. But what Alabama did is they wrote it into their bylaws that after they elect their state executive committee, they have basically they do a count of the diversity of those members. And then they look at their representative goals, they crunch the numbers, and they figure out, all right, have we met our API representative goal? Have we met our Black, disabled, Latin, LGBTQ youth? Have we met all these representative goals? And anything that has been met already just through the normal outreach and getting people to run and that sort of thing, great. However, if they didn't meet the representative goal, then let's just say, I'm just going to pick youth, for instance. So let's say the representative goal in terms of a number is 20 youth. And when you crunch the numbers and you look and you see, how many youth were actually elected, and let's say there were 15 elected. So that leaves a deficit of 5. So you need 5 more youth to meet the representative goal. So before they have the organizational meeting, where they would elect a chair and their officers, prior to that, somebody, lets the youth caucus know, we need 5 more youth to meet the representative goal. They asked the youth caucus to find and nominate 5 youth to their state executive committee. And then the same thing for each of the other ones that they had not met their representative goal. That diversity caucus is the only group that is allowed to nominate for people to come on the state executive committee. Now, the state executive committee ratifies them. So, the youth could send 5 and the state executive committee could accept all 5 right away. They could take 3, reject 2, they could reject all of them, but it's basically an up or down vote. But if they reject all 5, then it goes back to the youth caucus to nominate another 5. So anyway, the people, the group, that historically underrepresented group, regardless of what it is the group that is choosing the people to represent them on the state executive committee. Now, if we wanted to do something, the good thing about doing that is that it would fix the representative goal issue. If we could get that passed by, that would have to be built into the bylaws, and we'd have to get the state executive committee to accept it. Now, we have a much more reform-minded state executive committee than we did a few years ago. So, but I don't know if it would pass. I kind of think that it would, but it would be basically a floating number of at-large members, and I think it puts a lot of power in the hands of the diversity caucuses. I think the one question that comes to mind is historically underrepresented groups, like, for instance, the Indigenous caucus, Indigenous peoples, Native American, have a caucus. And if they would continue to not have a caucus and they did not have the representative goal met, there wouldn't be a caucus to them refer to. And the only thing I can think of would be an appropriate, two ideas come to mind. One would be anybody on the state executive committee could nominate, or that nomination would come from the affirmative action committee, similar to how we have 6 diversity at-large members already that we can nominate. So anyway, that's just a thought. I'm not pushing it one way or the other, but I did want to share with you that that worked well in Alabama. It was approved by the DNC to do it that way. And anyway, it's just one other potential method of getting our representative goals met for your consideration.
I like the idea. I mean, it makes it even, or maybe even's not the right word, but provides the opportunity to ensure everybody is represented.
And Selena, Andrew here.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the downside, that if these people were in name, weren't activist type personalities, it was just in name only, and they didn't do anything or didn't show up, it would kind of dilute the whole executive committee.
Other thoughts?
I'm still sort of confused by this, but I think maybe we ought not to bite off a whole heck of a lot at this point, and maybe proceed slowly and see how this goes, and then maybe next year think about something like this when it's a little clearer how we're doing in the state executive committee.
I'm going to speak. I think it's a good idea because just knowing that we need to grow, I mean, just growing our actual representation, whether it's LGBTQ plus or Asian Pacific Islander, I think, having a true representative state party executive committee that looks like the actual state Democrats, I think it's an important thing. Because I serve on the state executive committee too, so I know it's not truly representative of the people of West Virginia. So I think it's a good idea.
Am I muted? No, I'm not, sorry. I was thinking in terms of like the concern about getting someone in the seat just for like name's sake and not really using their voice on the seat. The way that we can maybe avoid that is first, I guess, go-to selection should be probably the voted in co-chairs of that caucus, because we would know that those individuals are involved and are able to, I guess, speak on the behalf of the community. Yeah, because they're on the caucus too. And those people were elected by their peers to be their co-chair, to represent them. So I feel like that would be like maybe a go-to to avoid that concern first, and then maybe hold an election in the caucus. Just spitballing there though.
Any other thoughts?
This is Pam with the Disability Caucus. And we are one of the ones that are the highest, I guess, because we're trying to get lower, the highest of being able to reach our, our membership, our truly represent everybody. I like this idea because if we are not at our goal, then by you having these being able that we can vote to represent, it lets me know that everybody then is being represented, the full everybody. So I like this idea. If it's something that we can't do this year, maybe, we can talk more about it and plan on it more for next year. But I can see the purpose in this. I can see a real reason why we would have something like this, representatives. And by us being able to vote in our committees to pick the people to represent our constituents, then I think that's good too, because then we know they're going to be there representing and speaking for whichever caucus they're representing. So that's just what I have to say about it. I like this plan. I hope it's something that we can do.
Anybody else that hasn't spoken already want to weigh in on it? Or have other, or other ideas. We've got, let me see, we're at 7:35. Maybe we can spend a few more minutes on this. So I think this is really the meat of the plan.
I will just voice, I know it's probably the way that I talked about trying to get through I guess our situations barriers, but I do think this is a good thing to add. Our whole goal as the committee is to make sure these underrepresented groups have a seat at the table. So I feel like if we can't at first fill that seat up with people on the ballot, let's fill it up with individuals on the committee too, because we have these seats. They allow us to have these seats, so why not take it? Because Lord knows it doesn't need to go to the same 30 to 50-year-old man as it usually does. No offense, though.
You mean 50 to 80-year-old?
Yeah, 50 to 80-year-old men, yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
But do we put this to a vote, or what are we putting to a vote?
Well, we don't really have a motion on the floor, but I guess I just wanted to hear if anybody had any. I think Andrew had a little bit of an objection. I think Dottie, you had a little bit of an objection.
Well,
But I think your
I'm
objection
happy
was
to
more
move
on the
forward.
timing. Yeah, I think yours was more on timing, not that you were opposed to the idea in general.
I'm happy to move forward if the bulk bulk of us wants to do that. Let's keep it moving.
Sure. And hey, this is Andrew. And I think as we get closer to the 50% and full representation by 2026, then perhaps that would be the time to really look at this.
Somebody make a motion.
Well, I don't know that we necessarily need a motion. I think maybe what we could do is keep what we have with these, with the changes of the date to update this, and knowing that, well, let me read this part. We could add something to the effect of, I'm just kind of throwing this off the top of my head. Oh my Lord, I don't know how I ended up with strike throughs, but the AAC will recommend rules changes
As necessary.
to provide for a full representation of historically underrepresented groups on the state executive committee. So that's kind of vague, but what we could do is then spend more time kind of fleshing this out. And then as of May 13th, I believe that there will be a permanent or a standing Rules and Bylaws committee. And we could make recommendations to them based on, like I said, having more time to flesh this out. Do you think that's sort of a happy medium that will get us where we want to go?
I'm happy with that.
Oh, yes, that sounds good.
Okay. Any objection to that? Okay. All right. So we're moving on to the outreach and inclusion program. So these are kind of overall outcomes and strategies that we have, efforts to publicize. This just needs to be. Okay, now there was a lot of changes in this, and this was trying to make it clear and also updating the information. I'll be honest, I want to go back through it and triple check the math to make sure this is correct. But I just wanted to make sure that each of these groups had a representative goal, one in terms of the Democratic electorate, a percentage, and then also in terms of a number, and then show how, the core number after you add the at-large ex officio officers and your committee members, that number, and then showing the diversity, the AAC co-chairs and diversity at large. And then at the bottom showing whether, what your numbers were, whether you exceeded, met, or you need. And so, as you can tell right now, the black, okay, let's see, AAPI has exceeded, black needs 2, they had met, but because of the increase in an electorate and then losing Danielle, that caused a deficit of 2. Latin Hispanic exceeded, and let's see, Indigenous, we have met, LGBTQ exceeded, and then youth and people with disabilities, those are our big deficits right here. Any questions about this, or would it be okay? Is it okay to accept these suggestions? Okay, I'll go, hearing none, I'll go back and accept those. I put in that explanation that you were talking about earlier, Dottie. Note that Indigenous people, Native Americans, make up less than 0.5%. There are no federally recognized tribes. However, there are Western Democrats that have Indigenous Native American ancestry, and therefore this plan will include a representative goal of at least 1. And so you can see that is the representative goal is 1. And then Appendix B is the outreach and inclusion plan, and this is for very going into the very specific different groups, and what are the specific, activities for different diversity caucuses. I think we need to go through and do name changes. But these are, what's really cool about these is that each individual diversity group can go through, and we can add to these strategies. We want that to be, an evolving thing that, if something works and you want to add it, or something didn't work and you want to take it out, this Appendix B can be amended at any time. And we encourage the caucuses to continue working on that throughout. So, and I can go, and we're kind of running low on time, but I can go through with your all's permission and do this non-substantive changes, like, changing names and things like that. All right, any other thoughts about this plan? Any other edits or comments that we need to discuss?
After you make those changes, could we have a clean copy?
Yes, absolutely.
Selena, this is Pam.
Uh-huh.
Hearing no discussion, I'd like to move that this plan be adopted and presented to the West Virginia Democratic Party Executive Committee for their adoption, and that the secretary be authorized to make any non-substantive formatting and editing changes that are needed.
I second that.
Was that Emily?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Emily. Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, I'll take a vote on that mouthful that Pam just said about basically adopting the plan, sending it to the state executive committee, and allowing for non-substantive, edits and changes. All in favor of adopting that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, all right, thank you. That is adopted. All right, let me
Awesome.
go back on screen now. Okay, so thank you. That was wonderful work, guys. Thank you all for your help in doing that. All right, so the other thing that we have talked like numerous times about changing the name of this committee instead of, I mean, we will sort of always be the small a affirmative, small action, small c committee of the state executive committee, because that's sort of like a formal thing. But we know that affirmative action is a very antiquated name. A lot of people for a while now have been very anxious to change the name, and I'd like to open this up for discussion to see if one, if people agree with that, and two, if there's any recommendations about do we want to do a name change, and if so, what do we want to change it to?
I think that, yes, we should change it. And what I've been rolling around in my head was diversity and inclusivity committee, inclusion committee, something along that line.
Okay. Anybody else?
Whenever we first started the AAC back when, I definitely was, supportive of everything, but I thought that the name didn't truly encompass what we were trying to, our goal, objective, and also I just felt it was a little bit of a dated term. But I think it would be a good idea to change the name to bring in more into the fold and have a more of a true self-explanatory, like what Danielle said, diversity and inclusion, and Jack squeaking his ball. But that is, I think, a more representative name for the group.
Whenever I've heard diversity and inclusion, D and I, there's always been an E between them. And for the life of me, I can't remember what the E stands for.
Equity.
Equity, there you go. Well, if we incorporate that, then we become the DEI committee, which is next only to God.
All right. Any other thoughts from people?
Yeah, a question. In other bylaws, national, where it's referred to as the Affirmative Action Committee, if we change the name, would there be a danger of confusing and people would think it's two separate committees? How would you name the committee to identify that this is in fact the AAC?
Well, my thought would be that in the bylaws that, one, in our plan, that we would say, we are let's just use the name that Danielle threw out, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which is the without caps affirmative action committee of the West Virginia Democratic Party, and that we would communicate to the Rules and Bylaws Committee that as well. So that's sort of my thought about how to do that.
And by the way, I do like the diversity and inclusion because it speaks to what this committee does.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I left off equity is is what we're trying to achieve. So I didn't know if that was necessarily in the title. That's why I dropped that. Just made it as a DI.
Any other thoughts?
I think we should think about including underrepresented somewhere in the title, because I think diversity, equity, and inclusion is a catch-all phrase. And I don't think we should include, I agree with Danielle, I don't think we should include equity because I think that's what we're trying to achieve. And that somehow suggests that this body can provide equity in some way, and it just can't. And I think it should speak to the work that's either being done or the goals that are being attempted. So underrepresentation of, or something that speaks to the goals that are trying to be achieved, but also include underrepresentation, because that is different than just diversity.
And also would add in, like if we do later on do veterans or other groups.
Well, I think that's honestly, I think that's a different question. And I'll tell you, because I think that, like, I think veterans can have a caucus that is not, I don't think every caucus has to be a part of the Affirmative Action Committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I think veterans can have a caucus, and environmentalists and labor, but I don't necessarily think because you have a caucus that you necessarily need to be on, and we could figure, I think the state party needs to figure out how to have those caucuses and how to give that representation. But because the Affirmative Action Committee is so focused on those groups that just have never got fair representation, LGBTQ, all these groups that we have named. I don't know that I would necessarily include them in. I think there's a fair argument for not including them in the Affirmative Action Committee proper.
I agree with you. That's why I think there is a distinction between underrepresented, which is what I think this committee is supposed to be about, or at least based on the charter and all the ideals, versus diversity. Diversity means you can have everybody. You can have veterans, you can have left-handed people, you can have Mormons, whatever. But underrepresented is uniquely specific to groups that have not been traditionally represented in the West Virginia Democratic Party, whatever that party looks like. And that could change from time to time, but it would still remain underrepresented as long as you keep true to the definition of those specific classes that were provided in the spreadsheet with the actual numbers of, or the actual percentages of participants in each diversity group, quote unquote.
So Kim, I just Googled, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you go first. Sorry.
Well, I just, just while you were talking, I Googled like synonyms for underrepresented, and minority, marginal, those are words that came up.
I think marginalized would be better than minority.
I agree. I laughed because I was doing the exact same thing
Well, yeah.
at the same time.
Great minds, Danielle.
And marginalized people's committee.
The inclusion of marginalized individuals committee. So we have inclusion and what was the word I just said? I'm sorry, it's late. My mind went blank. Marginalized, yeah. Inclusion of marginalized individuals committee. Because that's exactly what we're doing.
Does the word committee have to?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I thought it did.
I was thinking something like underrepresented constituents or something like that.
Oh, I like that.
Like constituents, meaning like when you hear the name, you have a sense of what it is they're supposed to do, as opposed to a catch-all phrase like DEI, which could just be an umbrella for a whole bunch of things. It doesn't necessarily tell you what those group of people are supposed to do, other than something not inherently whatever the majority is.
I love that. Underrepresented constituents committee.
Right. Like, something that speaks to the totality or the entirety of constituents that are not normally represented in, or not I don't want to say top of the pack, that are not necessarily the loudest voices, right? Because just by sheer volume, they couldn't have the loudest voices because they don't have the numbers.
Mhm. Do you or don't you like, and when I say you, I mean all of you, like or don't like the addition of the term historically, with that historically underrepresented?
I don't like adding historical because things change, and we may
Good point.
reach a situation where in groups that were marginalized in the past are no longer marginalized. And to take an example like the Women's Caucus, now that women have 50% representative at the state committee, there's already some talk about, okay, why do we have a Women's Caucus too? And I have a good argument for why, but it's at some point that may change.
Okay, so I think what I hear then is underrepresented constituency or constituencies. I think it's constituencies. And what was there another word that I think it didn't have committee on it? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was just constituents, I believe, right, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, you can keep committee if you want, like committee of underrepresented constituents.
I just
something
thought we
like
had to
that.
have committee at the
Well,
end. That's why I added it.
It has to have.
Yeah.
It has to have committee because we're a group acting on behalf of everyone. We're not everyone.
Okay, so committee of underrepresented constituents.
Does it have to be committee or caucus?
It's committee,
I
because
think
then
it's
I think
committee.
caucuses are the
Committee.
subcommittees, but more important than actual subcommittees, in my understanding.
If we are the committee of underrepresented, then we become CUR, which is not a good. I think IRC might be better.
No, it'd be cuck.
Oh,
Oh,
great.
that's also not.
CEC, cuck. But underrepresented constituents committee would be UCC.
No, that's also not good.
And so if we have a young group, it'll be the young underrepresented.
There you go. Well, I don't think the acronym is going too good, but I think the sentiment is, I like the sentiment of where we're going.
On the flip side, maybe we should embrace the yuck. I mean, the uck.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with ARC. For a long time, one of the major employers in the state was Union Carbide Corporation. They did well while they lasted.
So if we want to defer from those acronyms, and I still like underrepresented better, but we could change it to marginalized, because marginalized is definition insignificant is what the definition has in it. So you could see it as, unrepresented too. If the definition of marginalized is, let me get it back open.
Well, I do like marginalized because when you hear the word marginalized, what I hear is a group that has intentionally been left out.
Yeah.
Which I think is the actual case.
I do like underrepresented, but the first acronym, absolutely not. And the second one, maybe.
Well, I mean, we could just always call it the UCC, or
Yeah.
I don't know.
You could include both. It could be marginalized and underrepresented. So it's like muck instead of uck.
Muck, like the boots.
Right.
Well, we have
It starts with an F
We
in the
have-
front.
do what?
I hate to say it, but is there some way we could find a word that starts with F in the front?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
We're on YouTube. Um,
Forgotten and underrepresented.
Yeah, I think best would be maybe marginalized and underrepresented constituents committee.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that we change the name to marginalized and unrepresented constituencies committee.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
I'll-
Any discussion?
Let's get the name once again. What was that, Danielle? Marginalized.
Marginalized and underrepresented
Underrepresented.
constituency committee.
I think we just found a problem with the name.
And we need Mike
Can we-
Pushkin to use the full name at all times.
There you go.
Can we have one or the other? It seems to putting an and in there is unnecessarily verbose. It can be the marginalized CC or the underrepresented CC. But
Which do you like
Both.
better, Dottie? And we'll count that as an amendment because I'm just going to try to move us along a little bit. Do you want to amend
I-
it to underrepresented constituents or marginalized constituents?
marginalized.
Okay. All right. So there is amendment on the floor to strike underrepresented and be the marginalized constituents committee. Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. All in favor of accepting that amendment? Say aye.
I
Any opposed? Say nay. All right, we're back to the main motion, and the main motion now is to change the name to Marginalized Constituencies Committee. Any discussion on that? All right, all in favor of that name? Say aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed?
Nay. Sorry. Sorry. Marginalized is just so inherently negative. And we think of a more positive outlook other than marginalized.
So Kim is asking for a reconsideration of the vote. Are we?
sorry,
No, that's okay. That's okay. But is it okay? Can we reconsider that vote?
Sure.
I make a motion to reconsider the vote.
Okay. I need a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And so we're back
Aye.
to the main motion of marginalized constituencies, and I think Kim wants to make an amendment.
Yeah, I'm gonna let me just look up some synonyms for marginalized real quick because
And let me just,
underrepresented.
would it be horrible to go back to the underrepresented constituencies that we did have? Because it seemed like there was sort of agreement on that in terms of liking the content of the word.
I'm really okay with either one of them. You know, I see the value in both, but we got to pick one. So I'm good with UCC.
hold on.
Can you live with that?
Jim,
you're
how does
still
that
okay?
feel? Is that better?
I didn't hear what you said, Dottie.
Oh, I asked Kim what she thought about making it underrepresented constituency.
Yeah, that was the first suggestion. It doesn't have to remain that. I just think marginalized has inherently negative connotations to it. And if we are looking to like grow something positive, I don't know that future people are going to be like, yeah, I want to be part of the marginalized, whatever. You know what I mean? It just inherently sounds
Fair point.
uninviting.
Well, do we have to have a decision on that now, or could we wait till the next meeting and have some time to?
Let's just
Let me
have a
throw
motion
one.
and vote if we can.
Yeah,
So-
let me just throw, let me throw this out. What about inclusion? And this is, and just give a up or down. This isn't a vote, just an idea. Inclusion of underrepresented constituencies committee. So I think what Kim said is, she made a really good point. Like, you want to be a part of something that looks like it's, you know, including and growing and moving forward. And so it has the definition of the underrepresented, what we're trying to fix, but also the solution, which is we're trying to include these underrepresented groups.
So is there a motion to change the name of the group to the inclusion of underrepresented constituencies committee?
How about the Committee for Diversity and Underrepresented Constituencies? So it's DCUC.
I can live with it.
I like that one too. That can.
Duck.
Yeah.
Say
Or the
that again,
CDUC.
if you can remember it.
Yeah, so it's the Committee for Diversity and Underrepresented Constituents.
Committee for Diversity
And underrepresented.
and
Constituents.
underrepresented constituents. Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor to change the name to the Committee for Diversity and of Underrepresented Constituencies, I think,
And underrepresented.
and underrepresented constituents.
So
I'll second that.
For sure.
Okay, we've got a second on that amendment, and all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, okay. Any opposed, say nay. All right, looks like we're getting to consensus. I love it. All right, now we're back to the main motion, and any discussion? All right, all in favor of the new name of the committee being the,
Committee
Say
for
it again,
Diversity.
say it
Committee?
again. Mhm.
Committee for Diversity and Underrepresented Constituency.
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 Is it
singular or
is it plural?
Plural, because there's more than one
That's what I
constituency
thought. Constituencies.
represented.
All right, that's our main motion. All in favor of changing the name of the committee to that, say aye.
Aye.
Any
You can say, hey,
opposed?
guys, you won't hurt my feelings at all. Trust me.
I think we got it. Any opposed, please say nay. Yay, all right.
Just
Motion
as a
adopted.
technical thing, as the secretary, some of the muddlings with all the amendments may not make it through. But
I'll
the
help you out with
overall-
that.
Overall thing would be, and who was the primary motion, made the motion for that? Was that Kim?
For that last one, yes.
To
I
change the
think it
name.
was. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kim.
You're welcome.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. That makes me so happy. All right, so moving on, unless let me just ask, is there any other new business from the committee? Hearing none, I'm just going to move on to announcements. At the next meeting, which is May the 11th at 5 o'clock, we will have two sort of elections. We'll have an election for the AAC co-chair, male or non-binary. We'll have nominations and an election at that meeting. We'll also nominate and select a nominee for diversity at large, female or non-binary for Congressional District 2. We'll have that nomination selection, and then that person will be who we nominate to the State Executive Committee on the 13th, and they'll do an up or down vote. The State Executive Committee is going to be on Saturday, May the 13th at noon at the Kanawha County Public Library. And then also the public can view that on YouTube. if you are going to have, if you're going to do outreach and have people from your caucus, or just other Democrats run for some of these positions, there is, I think I sent a link today to the state executive committee, I'm sorry, the West Virginia Democratic Party webpage. And then on there is a list of all the members. They will want to, send emails to them, make phone calls to them, make sure that they're aware of them. And also they'll want to be on the call on May 13th. So they would need to contact either Ron Frankenberry or Mike Pushkin and say, and they have to have somebody nominate them. So they need to line up somebody to nominate them, and let me know if you have anybody too, because I'm glad I'm on the state executive committee, and I'm glad to nominate for diversity folks. So, but they would want to be on that either in person in Charleston or on that call, and then Mike can make sure that they're on the call, not just on the YouTube, so they have an opportunity to speak to the committee. So that is all that I have. Is there any other announcements or anything else that anybody would like to share or discuss before we wrap up tonight? Okay. Hearing none, and since we have finished the agenda, I'm going to go ahead and say that we are adjourned. Thank you all so much for being here and all the work that we did together, and we will definitely get a copy of this to you before we send it out to the state executive committee, but fingers crossed that this is adopted at the next on May 13th.
Thank you.
So